All right, let's jump into the world of cellar operators. We're cracking open these RoleCatcher career guides, and seriously, they're like a backstage pass to your favorite brewery.
Sounds like you're intrigued by what's happening inside those giant fermentation tanks.
Yeah, it's more than just, enjoying a cold one, right? You got to get the science of it, the yeast, the temperature. It's like precise. But instead of a science fair volcano, you get a delicious beer at the end.
Exactly. And that's where a cellar operator comes in, making sure those tiny yeast soldiers have the perfect environment to do their thing.
It's funny you say that this guide mentions needing a refined palate. Wait, really? Like professional beer taster level?
You better believe it, especially in craft breweries. Think about it. The cellar operator is tasting throughout the process, making adjustments, fine-tuning those unique flavors.
So you need a deep understanding of how those flavors actually develop. But this isn't all like sipping IPAs in a cool brewery, right? The guide mentions the job could be pretty demanding.
Right. Think long hours, sometimes unpredictable schedules, working with heavy equipment and, potentially hazardous materials. It's a hot, humid environment, a real test of your dedication.
Okay, got to be passionate and tough for this one. It reminds me of this trainee profile they highlight. They started at the bottom, cleaning tanks, assisting the brewers, paying their dues.
That hands-on experience is key. It's one thing to read about fermentation, but another to be right there in the thick of it.
And this trainee, they talk about monitoring those temperatures, pressure levels, making sure everything's perfect for the yeast. They make cleanliness sound as important as, like, a surgical room.
Absolutely, that sterile environment is crucial. And this profile, it really shows those essential starting skills. And then this guide goes on to show how those skills grow, trainee to junior cellar operator, then cellar operator, and finally the big league senior cellar operator.
That's quite a climb. So what changes as you gain experience? What does that career path actually look like?
Okay, picture this. You're a junior cellar operator. Now you're not just assisting, you're managing your own tanks, fermentation, and maturation. Like you've graduated from practicing scales to playing a concerto.
Wow, okay, so you need to be on top of all those fermentation processes, troubleshooting issues, keeping super accurate records, making sure the beer is, actually turning into beer.
Exactly. And as you progress, those responsibilities, they just keep getting bigger and more complex.
So what happens when you reach that top-level cellar operator position? What kind of new challenges are thrown your way?
It really is like leveling up, Becoming that cellar operator, it's a bit like you're not just conducting now, you're leading the whole orchestra.
Okay, so you're running the show. What does that actually look like day to day? Give me the details.
Well, you're juggling multiple batches, right? Different beers, different stages. You're developing the protocols, training new team members, making sure the whole cellar is humming along like a well-oiled beer-making machine. You're even collaborating with other departments like production planning, so it becomes a lot more strategic.
I can see that. The pressure's on when you're responsible for the quality and consistency of all the beer. And speaking of that, these RoleCatcher guides, they emphasize a lot of really specific skills, detail-oriented stuff, almost like a detective.
Spot on. And remember that phrase we talked about, being at ease in unsafe environments?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not about being careless. It's about being a total pro in a setting that has inherent risks. You've got the heavy machinery, you've got the chemicals, the whole nine yards.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. It's about knowing those protocols, being cautious. So, what kind of specific risks are we talking about?
Well, I mean, fermentation tanks are huge EE, right?
Yeah.
Often under a lot of pressure. There's always that potential for something to go wrong. And then you've got the cleaning agents, got to keep things sterile. Those can be dangerous if they're not handled correctly.
I see. So it's about having those procedures down to a T, making sure everything's done by the book to prevent accidents.
Exactly. And that attention to detail, it carries over into everything. We talked about cleaning those massive tanks, but imagine having to take apart and reassemble equipment for maintenance.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You need that mechanical aptitude, knowing how to work with pumps and valves and all that.
So not just brewers, but part-time mechanics too. It's amazing how much goes into making a single beer.
It's a whole process. And on top of all that, you've got quality control. RoleCatcher emphasizes that a lot. Constantly taking samples, analyzing, making sure the sanitation's perfect, looking for anything that could throw off the flavor. It's a huge responsibility.
No kidding. One little mistake could mess up, thousands of gallons of beer.
Yeah.
What kind of analysis are we talking about? Like microscopes and lab coats?
It can get pretty high tech. Maybe they're checking alcohol content, bitterness levels, or even just using their senses to pick up on any off flavors that could signal a problem.
That's where the refined palate comes in, like a superpower.
Exactly.
Hmm.
A good cellar operator, they can taste a beer and tell you not just if it's good, but what might need adjusting way back in the process. And then beyond the technical stuff, there's also just the art of evaluating the beer, the color, the clarity, the aroma, all of it.
So it's this balance of the science and the art, making sure each batch lines up with, like, the brewer's vision. Speaking of which, let's talk about how technology is changing things up. Automation's becoming more and more common in breweries. What does that mean for a cellar operator?
So it's like this whole other layer of expertise, right? You've got the traditional brewing knowledge, A&D, you need to master the tech.
It's true, and that's only going to become more important as technology advances. Makes you wonder what a cellar operator's job will even look like in, like, 10 years.
God knows.
Yeah.
But that's part of what makes it exciting, It's a field that's always evolving.
Totally. So for anyone listening who's thinking, hey, maybe I want to be a cellar operator, where do they even begin?
Well, these RoleCatcher guides are a fantastic starting point. They lay out the skills, the experience, the career path. It's all right there.
They really do. Plus, they've got those sample interview questions, which is super helpful.
Oh, yeah, gotta be prepared for those. It's their chance to see if you've got that passion, that attention to detail, that love for the craft.
And maybe a strong stomach for cleaning out those giant tanks.
Hey, it's all part of the job. But seriously, if you're fascinated by the science and the art of brewing, if you're a bit of a perfectionist and you don't shy away from hard work, this could be the perfect career path for you.
I love that. It's not just a job, it's a craft. You're creating something people enjoy, There's a real sense of satisfaction in that.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be raising a glass to a beer brewed by one of our listeners.
Cheers to that. To all you aspiring cellar operators out there, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep following your passion for great beer. Until next time.